Everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So this presentation is our webinar series focused on mental health and self-care. The purpose is just to talk about why mental health care is important and not incarceration, and also how it's essential for healing, and just to highlight some strategies on self-care and wellness. So the goal today is just to make this both informative but also empowering. And if we can go to our next slide. And then, so for the agenda for today, we're going to have some introductions. We're going to have a few slides on mental health and self-care, and then we have two great panelists that we will be able to ask them some questions and get some answers, and then we will have time for a Q&A, and then we will close out. We can go to the next slide. So just for introductions, like I said, my name is Roy Solis. I am an LMSW, licensed master social worker here in San Antonio, Texas. I do work as a mental health therapist at an AIDS service organization, and I am the Texas advocate for Positive Women's Network. And if you kind of want to go down the line and everyone introduce themselves, Vanessa.
Excuse me, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry, I'm off camera right now. I am not in a good place right now. But I am Vanessa Slaughter, and I'm an advocate from Virginia. I am dealing with the loss of my mother, my sister, and a friend of mine, family member slash tried committing suicide while talking to me on the phone. So I'm going to take a back seat right now and take care of me. Alicia, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Sending you love and prayers. Vanessa, thank you for still being on. So, everyone, I'm Alicia Diggs. I am in North Carolina. Um, yeah, and that's really all I have. I'm going to pass it on to Eric.
Hello, I'm Eric. I've been in the helping field for about 10 years. I'm currently the Director of Client Services at the San Antonio AIDS Foundation. Um, I'm an LMSW working towards my LCSW. So thank you for having me.
Elena, did you want to talk a little bit about the HNP Collective?
Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Elena Ferguson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the policy specialist at Positive Women's Network, and I'm also the coordinator for the Health Not Prisons Collective. So that is who is sponsoring this webinar tonight. HNP for short. Basically, we were founded in 2020. We are a collective of five partner organizations, PWN, the Zero Project, the Transgender Law Center, the U.S. Caucus of People Living with HIV, and the Counter Narrative Project. And we all came together in 2020 to kind of do the work of decriminalizing HIV in a different way, in a more intersectional way, in a way that is abolitionist in its framework, in a way that is more sustainable and long term than kind of just one-off projects, and in a way that really centers people most impacted by HIV criminalization as well. So that's kind of, we do a variety of different things. If you want to learn more about us, you can check us out on our website, healthnotprisons.org. Next slide, please, Kelly. One of our kind of flagship programs at the Health Not Prisons Collective is our HNP Advocates Project. So we kind of recognize that historically, like the people who are most impacted by HIV criminalization, BIPOC folks, have historically not really been at the center of the conversation or like within leadership positions within their local state HIV decriminalization coalitions. So we wanted to kind of change that, which is why we started this program to kind of give BIPOC advocates living with HIV resources and tools and training so that they could be leaders within their HIV decriminalization coalitions. So Roy Lee and Vanessa are our Texas and Virginia advocates respectively, and they will be leading us through today's webinar. So I'll turn it back over to you, Roy Lee.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about why mental health matters. And I just also want to just start off by saying thank you, Vanessa, for being here and for your help with this presentation. And this slide specifically, mental health does matter. So I appreciate you being open and honest with all of us and just take time for whatever that you need. And if you need anything from me or Elaine or any one of us, just reach out. Um, so why mental health matters? So mental health impacts every area of a person's life. That can be relationships, work, physical health, quality of life. So 1 in 5 adults experience a mental health condition. And if you really think about it, that number is so high. So criminalization often replaces adequate care. And so what that means is that if someone is, let's say, living with major depressive disorder and they are on antidepressants, if they're incarcerated, the priority is not always to, oh, let me get you your meds. There's a process, and that small time frame can be life-changing to somebody who needs those medications. And so it's really important that we think about all of these things when we take into account mental health. Um, the mental health symptoms, trauma responses, and survival behaviors are often criminalized and not understood. I've worked in different sections in social work where I've seen where someone who is having a mental health crisis is seen as a danger to society and they're immediately taken as like a threat. And as those things should be taken seriously, of course, but I think it takes time to have that knowledge and sometimes police officers or anyone to have that education or just the training on how to handle the situations should not make it worse. And instead of um, reducing the chaos that's happening, they might be heightening it. Um, so untreated mental health issues increases risks for substance use, housing instability, legal involvement. These are all things that we see in our everyday practice. It is a lot of the clients that I have here in San Antonio where I've seen that these are specifically the things that it leads to, and that's why we take mental health so seriously. And healing requires access to support and not incarceration. And this is what this is. Yes, it's a webinar, but it's also a support system. And I think all of us coming together is a great example of being there for any one of us when we need support to know where to reach out to or who to ask if you need resources. I'm so grateful to be a social worker. I think that I have ingrained in my mind to be like a caseworker at all times as well. So even if I'm wearing my mental health hat, I'm still working as a case manager and getting those resources. So I feel really beneficial to have that education and experience. And then we can go to the next slide. So this slide is on the cycle of criminalization. I just want to talk a little bit about that. Um, so there's a cycle that many people experience, which is trauma leads to coping behaviors, which get criminalized, which then creates more trauma. So instead of addressing the root causes, like trauma, lack of services, or untreated symptoms, sometimes systems often respond with punishment. But incarceration doesn't treat trauma, it amplifies it. And so breaking the cycle requires a public health approach. I think as we've seen with HIV in general, it's not always about, oh, let's reduce stigma. Yes, that's important, but it's also let's provide education. Education in itself reduces that stigma. And I think it's the same thing for mental health in any aspect of any condition, whether it be depression, whether it be schizophrenia. I think the more that we know and the more that we try to at least be empathy and understanding um, will help us. And so if we can go to the next slide. So then we can talk about the importance of self-care. So self-care can reduce stress and burnout. It improves emotional regulation. It strengthens resilience. It supports recovery and stability. And it also encourages long-term wellness. And I think these are all really great things. And I think, as I said, as my profession as a social worker, as a therapist, that I really take self-care so very importantly in my life. And we'll definitely get to talk about that more with the panelists here in a bit. We can go to the next slide. So just some types of self-care. They can be emotional, which can be like journaling, therapy, setting boundaries. There's physical types of self-care, which can be sleep, nutrition, movement. I know for me, going running is a major self-care of mine. I'm getting major FOMO because I didn't attend the San Antonio Marathon this past weekend. But running is definitely up there for me. There's also some social forms, which is healthy friendships, support groups, spiritual, which can be mindfulness, meditation, grounding techniques, and then practical, as in time management and just reducing chaos, taking that time for yourself. We can go to the next slide. So just the goals of this webinar, this initiative as a whole, is always to promote mental health awareness in the community. We want to decrease reliance on incarceration for behavioral health symptoms. We want to increase access to treatment, especially for marginalized groups. We want to empower individuals with self-care strategies, and we also want to advocate for policy change that prioritizes treatment over punishment. And then if we can okay, so for our panel, yes. And sorry. So for our panel, so we do have Eric Cartagena, we have Alicia Diggs, um, and I have some questions that I wanted to ask, and I'll just ask the question, and if either one of y'all want to step in, just feel free, okay? So one of the questions I had was, how do you apply trauma-informed care principles when working with clients who have been incarcerated or criminalized due to their HIV status?
So I can kind of share a little from my experience. So what comes up for me is first is building trust with the client. So by doing that, by building that rapport, that's going to help with, you know, first how well they receive your help. It's really the foundation that, in my opinion, um, connecting them to their supports. So in looking and thinking of the client and like in their environment, um, what is their environmental fit? Like who's in their circle of support and connecting them with those safe people in their lives, or finding new safe people to connect with. I found has really been have good outcomes for clients. Um, Also empower them. So, by recognizing their strengths and building on that, um, you know, I think last that comes up for me is validating their experience. So, like, a lot of these laws are antiquated and they don't reflect modern science. Um, and validating their, uh, perhaps sense of betrayal of their community, and that those feelings that could come from that, and just trying to connect and empathize as much as possible.
Definitely. Alicia, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, Eric, for that. I agree with you in regards to building the trust. That is so important and it goes a long way. One of the things that I do is definitely remind them that they are human before anything else and that their feelings are real. A lot of times our feelings are invalidated and people don't understand them, but we know what our feelings are. So it's important to make sure that they know that their feelings are real, especially after being like judged or punished or silenced by these systems that we talk about, that was never designed to support them. I also make sure that my approach is grounded with safety and dignity so that they know they're in a space where they can, really feel safe and open up about whatever it is that they're going through. But definitely reminding them that they're not defined by, the stigma, or if they have been incarcerated by any charges that, have had come up in their lives. Leading with empathy is something that definitely worked for me. Being transparent, and like Eric said, making sure that they are empowered and, affirming that they definitely have value and life and rights rather. And the next step for me is if once I've spoken with them and maybe further services are needed, I make sure that I have resources on hand to share with them.
I heard a lot of empowerment, a lot of empathy, a lot of creating a safe space, a lot of validating. And I think that's really important. And I think that's where the concept of meeting someone where they are is so important, because we have to take that time to step back for a second to be like, okay, I'm not looking at you as like, oh, you're my client. I'm trying to meet you where you are so that I can help you to the best of your ability. So thank y'all for sharing. Um, is there any particular way that y'all can help clients who are dealing with any like internalized stigma, especially if it intersects with race or gender, anything like that that y'all seen or noticed that y'all can share?
Well, I know that internalized stigma can be so heavy and it's such a burden to carry because it just continues to grow, especially if you don't have an outlet. And I'm just speaking from personal experience with this. Being a Black woman living with HIV, I understand how stigma can get layered into race and to gender, along with the lived experience. So for me, it's important to help people by speaking truth into their story. When I share my own journey, I remind them that, HIV doesn't define them. Any past history that may be quote unquote deemed as negative doesn't define them. And their past does not disqualify them because a lot of times when you're in situations that are deemed to be, this doom and gloom or this bad thing categorized that way, you really can have a feeling of, and speaking again for myself, that you
Mhm.
aren't qualified to do whatever that thing is in your life to kind of move on to the next level. Letting them know that they're not alone, because, it can feel very, very lonely when you're dealing with internalized stigma and external stigma. So making sure that I'm able to unpack lies that society has told them. And again, empowerment is really, really huge, making sure that, they know that I see you and you're not alone.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely second all of that. Yeah, and a little self-disclosure as living as a gay man, there is internalized homophobia that I still am contending with. And you know, with our clients, I think what I would say is it's hard to lead someone where you yourself have not been to yet. So, in processing our own trauma, will help our clients in turn with their situation and their trauma. That, if anything, I feel has been the one of the most salient things in the practice that I do is the work that I've done in myself.
Yeah.
Um, and some of the, other uh, practical things that I do with clients, again, reiterating, is that empowerment. So meeting meeting the client where they are, and scaffolding them up from there. So, you know, having our ideas, sometimes it's easy to see where we want our client to be, but they're not ready for that yet. And acknowledging where they are and what they're capable of in the moment, um, and using that scaffolding uh, method has been helpful for me. And then another practical thing that we can do that helps, it's the small things, is like reframing negative self-talk. So like I've had clients come in, and state this, verbalize this internal belief about themselves of, well, I deserved it or something along those lines. Um, I take the moment to rewind, be like, hey, I just wanted to, before we move on, say, what happened to you is not your fault. Um, and kind of make sure to take the moment to address those little self-talks or negative self-talks. And I've seen clients, respond well to that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think y'all both make really good you brought up two important topics of self-reflection and also the stages of change. I think self-reflection as a professional and as a person is so important because we have to take that time to really look in the mirror and say, like, what is it that I need to work on? And I think that is so powerful sometimes because, especially in a helping profession where we are helping others all the time, we forget to take that time for ourselves. And so that was a really important thing. And also the stages of change like you brought up, Eric, how if someone isn't ready, it's not up to us to say, no, you are ready. We wait till you are ready and we talk about, okay, well, you may not be ready right now, but what can I do to help you get a little bit more ready? Or if you don't want to work on this at all, we don't have to, and let's talk about something else. And I think that's really important on giving the client the autonomy to be the expert of their own life and really take into account what it is that they want to work on especially with internalized stigma. So thank you so much. Another question that I had was, what role do y'all believe that therapy can play in helping clients successfully reintegrate into the communities after incarceration?
Yeah. So I noticed the slide with the cycle of criminalization, and that really highlighted two stages that I feel therapy assists with in that. And it's processing trauma and working on coping skills. So, you know, in looking at like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have, you know, the our physical needs, safety needs, and then it goes to self-esteem. So those basic building blocks are definitely things that I keep in mind as I'm working with clients, um, in especially in reintegrating into society. Um, that those are necessary before we can move on to anything else. And so by processing trauma, that could include like shame, PTSD, we're, helping with that self-esteem piece, which is a basic human need, and those coping skills to have perhaps, to help with those communications between the client and other people in their lives and or within their environment to help navigate their environment better. But yeah, that's what I see as far as like the therapeutic role in that.
Thank you for that, Eric. Just to add a little bit to, because you really hit you hit the nail on the head with everything. But um, when I was working as a medical case manager, and I understood that reentry wasn't just going home for people, it was rebuilding their identity, rebuilding, trust in society and the people that they share space with, and also having a possibility of living a life outside of what it was before. And, I feel like in order for them to do that, all of those things that you said, and also any providers that they're connected with, it's important that they know the law and they understand understand stigma and they understand the realities of surviving and living a life, navigating re-entry. So, therapy, I love therapy. Therapy is reaffirming. It gives me a space to be honest, and just really go through those different steps. Like, you mentioned, Royally, like you may not want to do this right now. Let's put that on the back burner. But how can I help you so that you can get to those different steps? And I think it's important to make sure that we do hold space for that.
Yes, thank you so much. I really pride myself on, like I said, as a social worker, if I were to have a client who says, I need this specific resource, I don't just say, oh, here's this number you can call. I take the time to, I will call first to make sure that it's somewhere where I feel like my client will feel safe, where they will feel validated, where they will feel like they're understood. Especially right now with everything going on with the trans community and Trump, and I definitely don't want to send somebody and put them in harm's way. So I think even just taking that little bit of time to go and check our resources instead of just handing out, papers or phone numbers, and it really shows a client that you care and it builds that rapport even more. Especially with someone who was recently incarcerated. I can just imagine, like y'all both said, the trust in society and police and anyone that's helping. We don't know if they've been there for a week. We don't know if they've been there for years. And honestly, it doesn't matter because it affects everyone differently. And I think that that's so important is that every person will always have an individualized experience, and taking that into account is always important. So thank you. So final question that I have was just on a little bit of a lighter topic. What are some self-care practices that y'all personally do or that y'all rely on an everyday basis, whether it be for your professional self or your personal self? What are some things that help y'all for self-care? What do y'all do?
Uh, I know for me, it is so important to breathe. Things can get so heavy, and before you realize that you're almost in robotic mode, dealing with everything that's on your shoulders, everything that's around you. So, for me personally, I have learned to just Alicia breathe. And sometimes I have to say that out loud, like to myself. I'm by myself and I'm like, okay, girl, breathe. Just breathe. Let's take a moment because it's easy to go from 0 to a trillion in 2.5 seconds. I used to be a person who journals. Sometimes I'll do that. Me having a spiritual background, prayer could help. But I'm going to be honest with y'all, my thing is music. Music helps me if I'm sad, if I'm like really pissed off to the point that I'm about to explode. When I am by myself, I turn on some type of music and I might have to dance it out. I'll just dance it out through the house. I'll sing it out, and you can't tell me I can't sing when I'm in here doing my thing. So, those things help me. Also, I have access to like paint and canvases, and all I can do is stick people. But playing in that paint or adult coloring books, those are some things like I can zone completely out in an adult coloring book. I have my colored pencils and I'm just sitting at the table with the music going, and it is everything for me. And it helps me also reset. Because if I'm in a space of everything is coming at me, everything is going on, I'm reading this, I'm hearing that, family is pulling, everybody's pulling, and I don't have time for me, I'm completely empty at that point. And, I've heard the saying from, the old elder people, like the cup, when you think of a teacup and a saucer, the contents of that cup is yours. Whatever flows out onto that saucer, that's for everybody else. So if you're constantly pouring out of your cup for everything and everybody, then you're empty. And if you are pouring from that cup and you don't have anybody pouring into you, then how can you be of service to somebody who is in need?
I give a round of applause for all of that. I definitely hear that and I embrace that for sure. Um, yeah, definitely. So point I wanted, or one thing I wanted to mention too, is with self-care, it might look different for everyone. So what self-care for me might look different for the next person and vice versa. And so it's finding what resonates with you or is replenishing for you in your unique biology and your personality. For me, I need people to talk to. So, like, as stress escalates, I need safe people to be able to just like talk it out. That's something I've realized that that's like a necessary thing for me. Um, for me also, nature is replenishing. Um, you know, hiking and being outside is something that is really replenishing for me. Um, one other thing I wanted to mention as well is some self-care may not necessarily feel good in the moment, but it is self-care. So, like if it's based in your values. So, for example, kids can stress us out, but being a good parent can be self-care and that it's aligned with our values and it um, makes us feel fulfilled. And then there's other self-care where it's like we need that, we need to fill our cup in the moment. And so I'll take a walk outside or, hash it out with my good Judy next door. Um, so that's what comes up for me.
Yes, those are all great. I was thinking, because Eric, you said self-care is different for everyone. And I said earlier, one of mine is running. And one of my coworkers is like, girl, I don't run unless someone's chasing me. So it's so funny because, like you said, like I enjoy running and I enjoy like it's fun to me and it gives me that mental health escape. But it's funny. Dancing in my
Yeah.
mind, I'm Glinda from Wicked. Like I dance and I listen to the whole album and I'm in my room. But no, that's good. Thank y'all so much for sharing. Um, Elena, did you have any questions?
I don't know if I had any questions. I don't know. I guess maybe Eric and Alicia, like we are coming up on, holiday season right now, and that can be a tough time for folks mentally. So maybe if you could just kind of speak to, particularly like for people living with HIV, like need tips or kind of ways to navigate the holiday season, that would be great to hear.
Um, Eric, you go first.
Okay. So, what comes up for me, um, you know, I think it's important to find our tribe, especially if, there is any sort of stigma associated with people in your environment, finding those safe people to connect with that you can be your authentic self with, um, our chosen family. It might have to be chosen family. Um, and that's what comes up for me as far as, getting through the holidays with some of this social stigma and or discrimination from even our loved ones that, may not be the safest people to find our tribe, our chosen family.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Eric. When I'm thinking about that question, I think about people who I'll just say the season can be depressing for some people, um, especially if you live in areas where we deal with winter. And for me, when it starts getting cold, I'm a bear. Let's hibernate. I'm not trying to be out and all of that stuff. But, I am connected to people who really get sad during that time. And there's sometimes not much that you can say to a person when they're going through, especially if they're sad, not just because of the season, but because they lost loved ones during that time. And, they miss them and they're not there. It's easy for me personally to say, well, let's think of the good things that, remember those good things. But like Eric said, making sure that you have that tribe and then also setting up boundaries because sometimes we put on our face, we put that mask on because it's holiday season or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna go in here and no, that's heavy. That is so heavy sometimes. So, it is best. I agree with you to definitely find whoever your people are, your tribe. And, I can only speak for myself. Of my family being spread out in different states, I have a good reason not to be with my family. Not that I don't love them or anything, but during the holidays, it could be hectic. It's an expectation of buy gifts and buy gifts and buy gifts and spend money. And after the holidays, guess what's still there? Your bills, the things that you need to do, and I have what, 16, I think 18 nieces and nephews. I got four grandkids. I'm sorry. I love y'all, but my Christmas gift, holiday gift is a big hug and love, because it's bigger than that. But to kind of help other people, like I said, I really try to help remind them of the good things that they can kind of focus on, maybe get their mind off of. Um, and even if it is cold outside, sometimes a little breeze can help kind of shake your mood, getting outside, like you mentioned before, Eric. So it can be challenging, but I think the number one thing in me babbling on and hearing what Eric said is to make sure that you have your tribe, your people, and set those boundaries.
Yeah.
I wanted to add one more thing. I love everything you just said. One thing that stuck with me was the boundaries. Um, and yeah, that what came up for me in that is some relationships need a certain amount of space to function. So it's acknowledging how much space we need for that relationship to function and setting a boundary there. Some people we can have closer to us and it still function well. Some people we need more space for that relationship to still function normally. And so being mindful of those things with safe people.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, so for me, I would say always to remember to give yourself grace. I think it's so important that we take that time for ourselves, like I've said before. Sometimes keeping a routine, can help you. I know seasonal depression is really high. And so if you know that if you're gonna be home, you don't want to lay around all day because you're gonna get depressed, set a routine. At 10, I'm gonna go walk my dog or and have something planned out. That way you have something to look forward to. And I think that'll help people who want some like stability, even if they're off. And one of the biggest things that I always tell my clients is allow yourself to rest. Let's say I take PTO tomorrow. I go home and I want to bed rot and watch Netflix all day. The whole time I'm thinking, oh, I needed to go do laundry. Oh, I should have gone to work. Oh, I should have gone to the store. Tomorrow, the next day, I don't feel rested because all I did was make myself feel guilty for laying there. And I think we need to allow ourselves the rest. There's nothing wrong with resting and taking that time for yourself. So that's one of the biggest things that I would say as well. Did you want to open it up, Elena, for any questions?
Yeah, I think we have time for a couple of questions. So if you want to just either write your question in the chat and we can read it, or if you want to raise your hand, we can call on you and you can ask your question.
And while we're waiting on that, it just felt heavy on me that some people in our society feel um, kind of reject, um, I'm sorry, therapy, like it's a bad thing. Many of us grew up in households where it's said what goes on in the house stays in the house. And as children, now people are a lot different now with how they raise children, but I know when I grew up, it was like speak when you're spoken to, and we as children didn't take space when adults were around. And for me, and I'm just going to talk about me versus saying some people, for me, as I grew, I didn't have a voice. So, it took me a long time to really find my voice. And then when I went through things, I internalized them so much to a point that I would be the quiet before the storm. Like my blow up would be so awful to a point of I don't even remember that I said or did that. And, as I matured in my life, it was like, okay, therapy. And when I went into social work, I remember a professor saying every social worker needs a social worker, and that social worker needs a social worker. So everybody needs some type of therapy. And when I found that therapy doesn't make me weak, but it actually makes me strong, it makes me a better person. Um, I thrive off of therapy, to be honest with you all. I need it. It looks good on social media when people know me and see me doing things. It looks good right now, but like I can't wait for my next therapy session because life be lifing, as we say. But, in all of that, I just want, if there's anybody feeling like I'm not going to no therapy because I'm not trying to tell a stranger. Honestly, sometimes those are the better ones. They don't know you, so they come in with, clear eyes, no bias, and their goal is to help you peel back the onion of trauma so that you can get to the core of your happiness. So, yeah, just had to say that.
I love that. I agree 100%. Yeah, what came up for me was my mom. I'm like, Mom, you need to get into therapy. She's like, I'm not talking to a stranger about all my business. And I'm like, that's not what it's about. Um, and, you know, I can't be your therapist. So, but yeah, I think, um, it could help a lot of people for sure.
All right, we have one question from Kelly. Go ahead.
Um, okay, so this conversation around kind of like people who perhaps are dealing with trauma but are resistant to talking about it. And sometimes they show up in their trauma. And like I'm thinking of some experiences in my family where I like wish a family member would go and talk to someone and really dig into what's going on, but they won't. And so they show up in their trauma repeatedly. And I'm wondering about how we can both support someone who's needs to like kind of like you can recognize that they're in a state of heightened emotional they're in a heightened emotional state while still kind of like making sure that you are keeping yourself within your own boundaries, if that makes sense.
Well, what you just said put me in the mind of um, I have a family member who can really only talk to me. And the best thing that I can do for them is number one, just listen. Just listen and let them go on. And then when they take a breath, either take a breath or they ask a question, I acknowledge how they feel. Even if I don't agree with how they're handling, that's not my business and that's not for me to comment on. It's for me to acknowledge how they feel because some people they just want acknowledgement. They want to be heard. Some people want and need solutions, and it's important for me to let them know I may not have the solution, but what I can do is hear you. And many times, as I'm thinking about answering this, just speaking on the one person that I talk to, it always ends with, you know exactly what to say. I was pissed off, I was this and this was going on, but you always know exactly what to say. And thank you. That's the word, validation. That is the exact word I was looking for. People want to be validated. And I don't have a plan on what I'm going to say in that moment. A lot of times I am like quietly in my head praying, for me, like I said, I have a spiritual background. It's like, God, give me the right things to say. Because sometimes we want to help, but we open our mouths before we think, and we have destroyed the entire situation. So, those who have a spiritual background, not all the time. For me, I don't want to hear scripture all the time. I don't want to hear this positive thing. Well, on the brighter side of things, no. What I need is for you to listen. I need that validation. And then we can go to the next level after I have poured out. So I'm gonna stop there so Eric can reply.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it might be safe to say that we all have someone in our life that kind of reminds us of. And for me, it's connection first. So, um, acknowledging, again, how much space this relationship needs to function, what our boundaries need to be with this person, but making sure that above all else, there's connection, that they understand how much we care about them. Um, and that regardless of what they do or what they say, we may love them, need to love them at a distance, but we will always still have that love for them. I feel is really important, um, that that's communicated. Um, and then sharing what, you know, like Alicia was saying as well. Sometimes when we give advice, it's not always received in the best way, and it could create defensiveness. But we could share what works for us. Like, okay, well, I, in a similar situation, I did this and it worked for me. And I think you can kind of tell, based on your unique relationship, how well they would receive advice. Of course, if they're asking for it, then yeah, then go for it. But kind of be mindful of that. But connection before anything, I feel.
I was just going to add that, like I said earlier, 1 in 5 people have a mental health condition, right? So I think, like we've said with Alicia and Eric, validation, but also normalizing. I think people feel so shameful to say, I'm depressed, I have anxiety, or my mood is all over the place. And there's shame in that. And there's, like, I'm going to be judged. And I think it's a really powerful tool to be like, no, this is normal. Like, everyone deals with depression. It's not just you, and there's nothing wrong with you. And validating, and then, oh, having that rapport with them in that space to be like, if this is something that you really want to pursue or talk to someone about, like, let me help you find someone that can talk to you. I may not be able to do it because conflict of interest, but I want to help you find someone that you will feel safe with. And I think just taking that time is really important. Um, Elena?
Yeah, I guess any final questions for Eric and Alicia before we kind of close out? Yeah, Alma, go ahead.
So I just want to say the fear of being incarcerated by ICE, which is now a national issue, significantly impacts our mental health for someone living with HIV. You're almost like incarcerated in the mind because it's a continuous cycle. You get chronic stress, you have anxiety, you have depression, you have PTSD, you don't know who's going to knock on your head, on your door at night. And a lot of the immigrants are not even sleeping at night, they're sleeping in tents, just in case someone knocks the door, and you still want to be an activist, you still want to go to work. And you're just in this state of powerlessness. Like, what are your thoughts on this? Especially now with the coming holidays when we want to have our colleagues to turn on to reach out to love on us.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We are definitely in, I would say, unprecedented times when it comes to our legislation, and a lot of the even behavior going on with people in power. And that creates a lot of uncertainty and anxiety, spiking our stress. I think it's having control over, acknowledging what we have control over and what we don't have control over. I think that's something that could be helpful in any scenario. Um, you know, it shouldn't, in my opinion. I think what's happening legislative wise is criminal. And so, but unfortunately, there are some realities there in in the country that we live in. So understanding what we have control over and focusing on that. So the things we don't have control over could increase our stress. And finding those safe people in our community, I think now more than ever. And a safe person could be friends or family. It also could be people at agencies designed to help certain people in the community. Um, it could be, support groups. Um, so that's what comes to mind for me is, you know, uh, really emphasizing that, connecting with our supports.
I agree with you, Eric. I don't really have anything additional to add, except the importance of connecting with supports. And you mentioned earlier, your people, find out who your people are, who your tribe is, and, lean on them.
Thank you. That was great and helpful.
All right, y'all. Well, I think I can close this out. Kelly, if you could put the slides back up. Did you want to talk about these resources, really?
Yeah, just really quickly, since this is a mental health webinar, I did want to include just some national hotlines and mental health resources. There's a 988, there's SAMHSA, the crisis text line, the NAMI helpline, and there's also the Veterans Crisis Line. I just wanted to make sure that this was included. If you need any of these specifically, you can send us an email or a message on social media anywhere, and we can send you any resources that you may need.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Yeah, so thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Eric and Alicia, for your beautiful and amazing insights. Thank you, Roy Lee, for facilitating such a wonderful conversation. If you would like to stay connected to the Health Not Prison Collective, we do a bunch of different stuff from webinars like these to We put out a newsletter every quarter around HIV decriminalization that kind of updates everyone on like what's happening within the field. We do like a bunch of other stuff. We're at conferences, all the kind of major HIV conferences. So if you want to kind of follow us for more real-time updates, you can follow us on social media, or you can sign up for email updates if you just scan that QR code. And I'm going to turn it over to Sally Thomas, our coordinator of the Health Not Business Collective Advocates Program, for our final kind of message of 2025. Take it away, Sally.
Thanks, Elena. Yeah, so I just wanted to come on here today and say congratulations to all of our advocates who have been participating in the Health Not Prisons Advocates Project. It's a project that started in 2022. And over that time, we've been able to have some wonderful people join us, including Cam Moore, Bailey Beautiful Martin, LaShonda Salinas, Vanessa Slaughter, Rimsky Evans, who we lost a few years ago, Marnina Miller, who left us to become the ED at PWN. Shout out to her. Um, Kenya Moore, Valerie Pinkston, Ernest Brown, and Roylee Solis. So all these advocates have done exceptional things during their time with us. Some of them are in lead positions in their coalitions. Some of them are building coalitions from the ground up. A lot of our advocates have done things that I think they weren't sure they could do before they started the program. So it's been a really great experience to see these wonderful people grow into their leadership and their advocacy, and seeing their confidence soar over these past few years has been something that I really hold dear to me. Each one of you means so much to all of us, especially the coaches who work most closely with them. Um, and if any of the other coaches have something to share, please do. But ultimately, I just want to say that you all have done exceptional work. You should be super proud of yourselves. And I look forward to seeing all of the amazing things that you all do um, after this program.
Kevin, I'd like to invite you to give a couple of words if you're willing.
Sure. I think it has been one of the highlights of my career, working with all of these advocates. They have made a big difference, and I hope also we have demonstrated through this program the importance of making sure that HIV decriminalization coalitions are stronger when we have as many voices at the table as possible. Um, I have no way to understand how decriminalization efforts can affect anyone but an old gay white man. And if we want to make sure that no one's left behind when we repeal or modernize laws, we've got to have everyone's viewpoint at the table. And I just think that these advocates in each of their own special ways have proven what happens when those types of practices are adopted and made to happen. And I congratulate you all, because it has been a true pleasure working and getting to know all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin. I guess I can say a few things. Yeah, I can't believe this program is coming to a close, at least like this iteration of the program. And I've had the pleasure of coaching, I guess, three of our advocates at different points in their journeys. And it's been such a pleasure to kind of watch you all grow in different ways. I especially want to shout out Roy Lee, just because, they have really pivoted and roll with the punches to make this webinar happen. I'm very proud that it has finally come to fruition, and they've done such a good job of facilitating and, allowing us all to be here. Um, yeah, so I'm just very proud. This program has gone through many different iterations. We've lost advocates, we've shifted in our priorities, we have welcomed new advocates along our journey. So, yeah, I think it's just been a pleasure working with all of you, and don't be a stranger. We definitely want to keep watching you grow in the ways that make the most sense for you, and hopefully, you keep advocating against HIV criminalization in the ways that use your skills the best. So, um, Kelly, I don't know if you have any closing words or not.
I think it has all been said.
All right, y'all. Well, that is all we have for you today. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Eric and Alicia, again for your wonderful insights, and Roy Lee for facilitating us through our final webinar of the year. So HNP will be back in full force, hopefully in 2026. And until then, have happy holidays and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, y'all.